Hi, this is Charles McElveen, and we'll be looking at how to have effective Zoom meetings, part 2. So these are suggestions that we have from students that we've compiled over the last year or so. So there's several topics we're going to be looking at. The first one is better discussion management. You'll see here in point number 1, Zoom's being hijacked. So the thing with that is just make sure if you've got a lot of students that you set a timer. That would be helpful. And the second thing is tell students that they've only got so much time and that you're going to be watching the content of that. Okay, so that way students don't run off with it. Second complaint they had was, you can see here, needing to learn how to set up Zoom meetings. So if you look in the faculty manual or you refer back to part 1 of this video series, you'll see a little bit more information on that, but the real in-depth is going to be provided in the faculty manual. The third thing they pointed out was the meetings themselves need to be more meaningful, and we're going to have some guidelines for that here in just a few minutes. I'm going to show you how to get into that, maybe how to do little short, well, I call them like mini lectures, mini presentations. So that will help govern the quality of the instruction. Students want to hear from us more. So that's what this is going to take us to. And the last point that they've made is starting late because of technical errors. And that's going to come right back to understanding how to use the breakout rooms, how to set up meetings. And that's here in this second bullet here that we've already talked about. The next point that they made was that they'd like to see more teaching. Now here, we've already mentioned this here in this third point. And so here I'm going to revisit it. More in-depth teaching comment beyond what they get in the weekly content or drop for the course entirely. So think, where's some extra things you could bring in the course might not mention? So here's a great way for you to have more ownership of the course. I understand that we created the course content, but this is an opportunity for you to personalize it, for you to inject more of yourself in it. So in this little teaching that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, by all means, insert yourself into this and provide some of that content. Now, the second bullet, students will want to know about teaching on specific topics a little more. And that's going to, again, go back into paying attention to what the agenda is and following that agenda, but also look at the lesson outcomes. So whatever anecdotes or materials you pull in, please make the stuff that you pull in match the outcomes. And then this third point here, professors teaching instead of students sharing the whole time, that's exactly what our mini lectures are going to do. Lastly, virtual meetings could be less introductory and more substantive. Again, these comments are all driving us towards this idea of the mini lecture. So let's move on to the next screen. Ouch. Sorry, had a hiccup with my Bluetooth. Let me make sure I'm on the right slide. Yep, okay. So here we go. Let's talk about the mini lecture, which I've already prefaced by saying this is your opportunity to bring yourself into the lecture. So your overall goal is you want to add value to your students' learning. So don't think, well, this would be fun to share. I think I'll do this limerick. I'm going to do this, or I will present this graphic or whatever. If it doesn't add value to the students' learning, don't add it. And incidentally, if you feel like you have nothing of value to add to that lesson to begin with, be very cautious about things that you then add, because you don't want to take them down the road with spurious content. So just, again, focus on the agenda of the lesson, look at the outcomes, make sure what you're getting ready to talk about is going to be germane to those lesson outcomes. So the purpose, you're setting context in your Zoom session. So in your mini lecture, you're going to set context. You know, here we are in week 2. Here's what week 1. Here's week 3. You're going to correct problems you've noted in assignments. For instance, here's your opportunity to say, okay, we asked you to do this, and a majority of students were going off the rails in this area. That could be really helpful for us to know, because it would help us to know if the problem is with how we're writing it, if it's too complicated. Or also, it could be that students are just missing the instructions altogether. This happens a lot where students will only read partial points of the assignment and they may lose added pieces that they didn't slow down and pay attention to those. So drawing those connections to those assignments is really helpful. Another purpose, you're setting the stage for upcoming stuff that they're going to need to know could be challenging. Great example of this is oftentimes our courses have students working with organizations. It could be the organization they're in, or we have them reaching out to other organizations. That frequently happens in week 2. So in week 1, and it's too late now, right? You're in the Zoom session, it's week 2, it's time for them to, be reaching out to organizations. So in week 1, if you had a course like that, it wouldn't be a Zoom thing. You'd be making announcements saying, hey, we're in week 1, but make sure you look forward to week 2 for this thing that you've got to do with another organization. Same thing here in the Zoom session. You could say, okay, you've got an assignment coming up in week 3 or week 4 where you're going to have to do this, and it could be complicated. So start working on that now. A great example of that, again, is like in the mentoring course, where students have a mentor evaluation that's due in week 8, but you actually send that mentoring form out in week 6, so the mentor can work on it in week 7 and brief the student in week 8. So it's really important to be looking ahead at the material that's coming up in the course so you can prepare students for what may be coming that could be challenging. So here in this slide, we see an example of context, and you can see here in the week 2 Zoom right here that you're paying homage back to week 1, saying, okay, here we are with week 1. By all means, what they should be doing is looking ahead to week 3 if there's anything problematic, or here's how it fits within week 4. Consequently, if you're up here in the week 6 Zoom, most of our courses have a week 2 and a week 6 Zoom. Then what you would do is you would be saying, okay, here's week 5, and here's how that looks in context with week 7 and week 8. Now, if you have a course that's got a week 4, well, then you'll be going back at week 3 and then showing your course in context for the week that you're in, as well as the week coming up in week 5. So that's an example of setting context. So here's some guidelines to help you in this process. You're adding to Zoom, not replacing it. That's the big thing. You don't want to waste students' time. Some of the agendas have already been modified or revised. So if this is the first time you've taught a course, in a particular course in a while, and you remember teaching in the past and you think you have it by memory, please make sure that you read the agenda ahead of time so you can make any changes you need to in your mind before you go into that Zoom agenda. And bear in mind, we update these courses every time a course runs. So there's a pretty good probability that there's going to be something in the course material or in the Zoom itself that you're not aware of. So make sure you're paying attention to that agenda. And then here, lastly on this slide is no more than 10 minutes. Okay, again, you don't want to replace it. We've only got 60 minutes. Now we're down to really 50. And if you take away all the preambles time in the beginning, breakout room, you've lost 5 minutes. So now you're really only talking 45 minutes. So bear that in mind. If you do think that you need more time, again, this is really critical. Obtain permission to deviate from that 10 minutes. And here, it's important to have a chat window using private message, not group message, because if they respond to everyone, there's going to be peer pressure, and you don't want that kind of bias and influence. So open up and have them send you a private chat. Some more guidelines here. Screen share examples or demos where appropriate. An example of what I'll do oftentimes is I definitely do screen share, but I use I'm an Apple user, so I have an iPad, and oftentimes what I will do is right inside of Zoom, there's a provision to share out your iPad. And I'll actually open up my iPad and I will doodle on my iPad so they can see what's going on, and that really helps me and help them, because when they ask questions, I can do erasing on that pad, and I can do some more scribbles, so to speak, and I can rediagram. So that gives me a lot of flexibilities and allowing time for them to digest. So the thing about this point here is be really careful about how much information you're dropping on your students. You've only got 10 minutes. If you are doing something complicated in 10 minutes, I really recommend you shorten that and maybe have a 5-minute and give them plenty of time to break it up. And then what you could do is you could record separate segments and upload those in the announcements and have students watch the announcements, the videos that are in the announcements. If they have any questions, and they can feedback. You could also turn those announcements into mini chat rooms by allowing comments. And that way you can get some dialogue going within the comments too. Often offering office hours is really crucial. So if you're finding out that in this lesson that students need more time, well, some of them may need more time, then here, offer, try to say that 10 times, twice fast. Office hours. Offer office hours, sorry, if more time is needed, and that's fine. Have them touch base with you via email, or they can contact you by phone. You can do it by Zoom. Just if you're going to do that, memorialize the conversation in an email back to them so they have that record. All right, this whole slide about the intricacies of recording Zoom meetings, I'm going to defer to the manual on this. The manual breaks this out in very good detail. So if you look like in lesson 5 of Faculty 101, or you look in lesson 2, you're going to see links to in both of those lessons, and those will take you out to the part of the faculty manual that gives you process here on recording in the breakout rooms. Lastly, if you know that you're going to miss a Zoom session, this becomes really critical, by the way. If you're the only faculty, you've got to make sure that you notify everybody. When I say everybody, make sure that you notify all the students that you're out. Make sure you send me an email, Charles McElveen, so I can follow up with that. And another one you would send would be to support@cityvision.edu, so we can try and get that covered the best we can. Nothing worse than a student showing up to a live session and a faculty member is not there. As far as co-teachers in the course, if a faculty member is out, for instance, for some reason, there's several faculty members in that course, make sure that you send the attendance list here around to all faculty ASAP so they can add the grades. Oftentimes it's at the end of your Zoom session. You will actually send that list around to everybody so they can verify who they've got on it. Excuse me. And bear in mind, now that you've got the attendance capability in Zoom, you can just check that as well, and you can see attendance that way. Last point here is, let me see here, faculty should balance sticking to script. And we've already talked about that a little bit. You're not replacing it. You want to be able to augment. If you've got something unique going on, if students are struggling with something specifically, for instance, in my course, I've got nonprofit program planning, and the biggest hang up students have is they get mixed up between outputs and outcomes. And there's been times I've had a live session where I have to actually stop the bus and I have to deal with that. And I have to just tell them, look, I need to put the agenda on hold because you all need to really make sure this topic is clear. And the last point here is avoid spending most of the time meeting on introduction. If there's a lot, and you can see if there's a lot of students, go into the break rooms before you start the introductions. Once you're in there, by the way, record your breakout locally to your computer. And again, follow the instructions in the faculty manual. There's directions on how to upload that afterwards. But do the introductions there. And if you still got a large number of students, let's say you've got 12, 15 students, and that is possible, shorten it up. Be ruthless on that, so to speak. Just tell them, hey, just tell me your name, where you're from, maybe, and keep it at that, and then round robin it so everybody can get that introduction in, okay? So you don't want to take up the entire Zoom session with introductions. Okay, that's it. I hope this has been helpful to you. Thanks.